Hello everybody, this is Centris again with another video. This time I'm recording from a laptop and I'm making a video on one of my campaigns. This is going to be a little awkward for me to explain at first because I haven't really rehearsed anything before this, so please bear with me here. I want to explain, well, I want to explain the campaign premise. First of all, this campaign is sci-fi slash fantasy. There's time travel and space travel involved. Some famous examples for what I've done is, for example, traveling to Victorian England and traveling to time and space to the 50th century in a setting that I made. So that's just a couple of examples. That's a couple of examples I've done from this campaign, and the actual premise is that the party hunts down these artifacts. Now, they're not really artifacts, as in with reality bending power, as D&D artifacts tend to be, but they were named this way by their creator, which is a man named Kairos, the Master of Time. See, there is a race called the Tempest Custos, which is a homebrewed race specifically for my campaign, and their purpose is to watch things from the plane of time. They basically take the role of watchers, never interfering, and if they interfere, may the offense not be as great as some infamous examples that I will get into later. Possibly not in this video, but possibly somewhere down the line. Basically, the Tempest Custos are, like I said, there are a race of watchers, and Kairos is the one that leads them. Kairos is a master smith, and he leads his people. He has a grand project going, making magic items based on 76 constellations of the sky. On 76 of them. Keep that in mind. It's kind of relevant. And one day, his apprentice, in a fit of drunkenness, he decides to scatter them across the multiverse, and as punishment, he is sent to this fantasy world that I made called Io. Well, actually, he does retain his powers, but they're extremely limited. And now he's recruited the party. He's recruited the party for his mission to collect them all. And somewhere down the line, there's a antagonistic force, the big bad evil girl, instead of big bad evil guy, who is also collecting them for nefarious deeds. Now that I've explained the campaign premise, I want to get down to meeting the cast. Now, bear in mind, a lot of people have come and gone in this campaign, and it's gotten to the point where nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody, is here since session 1. Like, anybody who was in session 1 is no longer in the campaign for different reasons. But I'm gonna start from the order of introduction. Gonna give you a brief summary of who each one is, like on the order that they first appeared. The first up is Frou. Frou is a Dwarven Barbarian with a few levels in Druid, and who has prestige into Animal Lord. His background is that he was a mountain dwarf. He was in this community, learning about brewing beer. or ale, if you want to go with a medieval theme. But that's his whole thing. He is learning how to brew all kinds of ale, and he's on a quest to make, yeah, like I said, to make all sorts of kinds. Now, he left his home and went into the Druidic Grove, which the party makes as a base of operations later down the line. But he goes to this Druidic Grove and opens up a tavern with the help of one of the leaders there. And what I did here is do something like an infusion deal. Like infusions are normally items or potions that are made of magic. You know, like I guess that could just be regular potions. But what I did with Frou is that he can brew beer and infuse a spell in it. Now, it can't be just any spell. It has to be something like a healing spell or support spell. But yeah, it's actually an Earth touch instead of potions. So that's his thing. He wants to travel the world and the multiverse at this point in order to learn all kinds of ingredients to make beer with and make them himself. As for his class, he is, like I said, he's a dwarf barbarian first and foremost. He's with a bear totem. He's a bear totem barbarian, and he's got a few levels in druid, so he's got some spells that he can use to make the beer with. And he's prestiged into animal lord because animal lords commune with their spirit animal. In a sense, that's the whole shtick of the class. What I didn't explain earlier, this is a 3.5 campaign. It's not 5th edition, though I did give Frou a feat from 5th edition because it fits his background so well. He's got the feat Tavern Brawler, which makes him proficient with improvised weapons. Now, in 3.5, you take a -4 penalty whenever you use an improvised weapon. Like a broken bottle can act like a dagger, and you take a penalty to its attack roll. A chair leg or a table leg can be used as a club, but again, -4 penalty. However, with this feat, Frou can use improvised weapons without taking this penalty. So what he's done is that he's got a chair leg, and he uses that to whack people with. Excuse me, I do have a cat here with me, and he is crying, even though he has food and water. But anyway, I guess that's enough about Frou. You kind of get what his whole thing is about. Next is Nasir the Exiled. He was actually the player was actually in a different campaign, and he was his own separate party. Only one other person is playing with us from that party, and I'll get to him eventually. But Nasir's background is that he is a worshiper of Bahamut, and his whole village was xenophobic to the point where they wouldn't allow him to worship Bahamut. So he just left. He was exiled. That's why he's called Nasir the Exiled. Anyway, I can't really go into detail with him without getting into the story elements, and that's gonna have to wait until later. Right now, Nasir is a dragon shaman, a gold dragon shaman, which gives him a breath weapon and somewhere down the line. But his main role is as a support class, while also being a decent frontline fighter. The player admitted himself that he's aware of the Dragon Shaman's weakness, that the Dragon Shaman is a good support early on, but his usefulness dwindles down the line. Next, we got Arytiss. Now, he is actually a black scale Lizardfolk, and he's the second barbarian in the party. I think he actually just went full barbarian for this role as player. The player did made him just a full barbarian. I didn't check his I didn't check the whole sheet, and I'm not going to do so on this video. I'm gonna look at him in a later time and possibly just post everybody's stats on the description. But Arytiss is just a black scale lizardfolk. Now, normally black scale lizardfolk. Actually, no, 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 no. I'm stupid. No, I homebrewed. I homebrewed the black scale lizardfolk into a playable race. However, at the player's request, he asked if he could just be a lizardfolk that is just mutated or something like that. I can't remember the exact conversation, but basically, a lizard folk that's grown pretty big up to the point that he's large sized. So yeah, he's large, and he's got. I don't remember the weapon. I think he's got a. I'll have to check later. I'm really sorry. He and Ezekiel actually joined the party recently, so I can't remember everything on the top of my head. But Arytiss is a barbarian. I think he's just a full barbarian class, and his purpose is to become a knight. Yeah, that's his backstory right there. He wants to be a knight. He's low on the intelligence, but that's not gonna let him stop him. Next up is Ezekiel. Now, something to note: while 3.5 offers a variety of options, Ezekiel here is actually playing a prestige class from a third party, which I approve. He is a Scion slash psychic vampire. That's the name of the prestige class, basically. And he's actually an Elan, or however it's pronounced, Elan. And I call it Elan, though anybody's welcome to correct me. His goal is to discover and unlock the full potential of the mind. And like I said, he and Arytiss pretty much join pretty much at the same time. And the party's aware that he's lawful evil, but he doesn't believe in killing unless it's absolutely necessary. But he's also admitted that he wouldn't lose a wink of sleep by killing somebody if he ever had to. And last but not least is the other player from a different campaign that's actually was with Nasir. Well, the player was with Nasir's player, not the character. It's Leif and Bobo, his tiger. Leif is a druid who's worked with the Druidic Grove that I mentioned earlier. Now the Druidic Grove comes in 3 circles, and that's how their hierarchy works in the Grove. Third circle is the lowest, first circle is the highest. And Leif actually doesn't belong to any of them. He is just a strong collaborator who helps them out in any way he can. But Leif, he's actually a druid slash battle sorcerer slash arcane hierophant. And if you don't know, an arcane hierophant is basically kind of like a mystic third, except that it's more centered on the druid. And it even says on the class description that they still have to abide by the druid's code, which is to not wear any metal armor. Some metal weapons are okay, apparently, according to the druid's weapon proficiencies. But that's the Mystic Thurge and the Arcane Hierophant, basically. It's a prestige class that advances both your divine spellcasting and your arcane spellcasting. It's not either or, it's both. And Bobo is just his tiger companion who is with him. He's a good boy. from what I can tell. Like I said, these were I introduced them in the order that they appeared, and Ezekiel and Arytiss they joined recently, and Leif joined even more recently. I would say about his first session was actually last week. So now that you know the characters, I want to get into the story so far. Now, like I said, none of the original party members are here in this campaign. Like, no one from session 1 is here, and they're all gone for different reasons that I will not disclose here because it's just too personal, really. But let's see. I got it. I got it written down. And oh boy, where do I begin? I actually wrote a summary of the campaign, and it's still pretty long. So I'm just gonna write down. I'm just gonna tell you guys what I wrote down. So here goes. Like I said, it's a fantasy / sci-fi campaign, and I typically try to keep things PG-13. Now the violence can get out of hand. Like I could say, oh, your critical hit decapitates this dude, and blood spurts everywhere. But besides that, there's several things I don't allow, and that's pretty much anything that falls under rated under an R or higher rating. But anyway, let's continue. One of the main locations in the game is a world named Io, an underdeveloped planet with the level of technology ranging from the 18th century to 21st century Earth. There are 6 continents. The frozen dwarven lands of Bifrost, which is where Nasir comes from, and it makes up the world's South Pole. Grodon, an anarchic land filled with canyons and mountains and wastelands, ruled by hobgoblins who instigated a war between the giants and finished off the winners. The Shimmering Shoals, a region made up of several islands with close ties to the elemental plane of water. The Kingdom of Helix, a center of trading and commerce for all regions. Mesarthon, a matriarchy whose royal family traces its bloodline to brass dragons. And Thule, which is where a lot of the story took place, where necromancy is law, or was, or still is, actually. We'll get into that. And it's frowned upon by the local Druids. Now, something I've established for this campaign is that a lot of people see necromancy as kind of a gray area. Like, oh yes, you can do this. You can't do this unless certain conditions are met. Oh, if you have good intentions, it's fine. Well, what I did with necromancy is that I said that it's a distortion of the natural order. That all living things must die eventually, and la 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 la. Now, raise dead, resurrection, at least it brings the soul back, and since the soul wants to, it's not as much of a disturbance. Necromancy, however, what I said for flavor was that it bounds the soul of the deceased against their will, usually, which is why it's considered evil. And that's why I said, hey, death effects, anyone that dies by a death effect can't be raised from raised dead. And that's an actual rule. Now, they can be brought back with reincarnation or true resurrection, but raised dead, not so much. But anyway, the story begins with the introductory characters. Like I said, they are no longer with us. And the game starts in a prison somewhere in Thule. Actually, the name of that city was Ganymede, named after one of Jupiter's moons. They meet a man in jail named Cronus, who was sentenced to a beheading. The party breaks out and help him out as well. And he was able to get their stuff thanks to teleportation. So they basically helped each other out, and he broke them out of jail. They transport themselves out of the prison, and since they're fugitives now, they decide to leave town. They find a druidic grove, where they find shelter and set up a base of operations. The name of this place is called Rosewood Grove. At some point during the journey, Cronus reveals that he's a time traveler from the plane of time. Looking for strange objects, he's dubbed the Artifacts. There's 76 in number, all named and powered after 76 of the 88 constellations of the night sky. So the party decides to help him out, and they start traveling through time and space. It was a bit of a culture shock at first, but you eventually get used to it. However, excuse me, during a trip to a certain planet, they meet a figure feared across the galaxies. The Sorcerer Alcietti was also on the hunt for these artifacts. Wearing white armor and a horned helmet, the Sorceress wants the party not to interfere with her plans. Cronus, believing she is collecting the artifacts for some evil deed, asks the party to keep collecting while staying below the radar. Things pick up back in Io eventually, as the Dread General of the land visits the grove to arrest the party. About that, since the party was fugitives and they bumped into bounty hunters who failed miserably, one of the generals of the land actually visited the grove. And on this setting, there's two Dread Generals. Augustus, former paladin and is now a blackguard / warblade, and Count Demetrio, Dread Necromancer / Ruby Knight Vindicator, and I forgot what else. Crusader / Dread Necromancer / Ruby Knight Vindicator. The build is actually legal, it's just not that optimal, but he had more levels than Dread Necromancer. He's actually pretty terrifying if used right. Anyway, Augustus flees after a fight ensues, and it goes south for him. But a captured lackey of his revealed that he will rally his men to siege the grove in a matter of days. So the party decides to defend the grove and chase after the general in a town named Cassandra, where the Elan was building a structure he dubbed the Tower of Heaven. See, the whole deal with Augustus was that he's a conqueror, and to pump up his pride, his ego, he decided to challenge the gods themselves. Now, it's not really a good idea if you're like a level 14th character like he was. But you do you. You can probably break the game at that point. The party, on the way, they meet the leader of a rebellion, named the Arrow, and his ally, the old necromancer, Count Demetrio. Here's a little background on the Land of Thule. The Thule was kind of an evil patriarchy kind of deal. Like I said, necromancy was law. You couldn't get arrested just for practicing necromancer. In fact, it was encouraged because the nation's patron was Weejas, who is the goddess of magic and death. And so, since she was the patron, and people couldn't be stopped for the pursuit of magic and death, in this case, the art of death, necromancy. So it was encouraged, even though the subjects were unwilling a lot of the time. And, the Arrow was against that. He wanted his people to be free, and he called them his people for a reason. Well, let's find out in a bit. We'll find out in a bit. Demetrium was one of the generals of Thule, but he worked for the Arrow as a double agent. It was then when the party found out that the Arrow was the bastard son of the current king. Surprise, surprise, right? It's a common cliche. And his rebellion was formed so he could take his place on the throne. His first step was to slay Augustus, and ally with the party to take him down. The arrow rallied his rebels to distract Augustus' guards, while the party used the distraction to infiltrate the city. They make their way up the tower, where they find Augustus at the top. A battle ensues, and before the killing blow was struck, Demetrius showed up. His plan was to slay the party, so none could interfere with his future plans, and revealed to be the one responsible behind Augustus, once a noble paladin, shift to evil. Let's see. Okay. The party and a weakened Augustus actually team up to take down the Necromancer, who commandeered the general's army of devils and brought along his pet Gargoyle and a slaymate. Now, a slaymate is basically the walking corpse of a child, which is given unnatural abilities. It's a walking meta magic rod, basically, especially for necromancers. So the necromancer decided to bring it along, and so he could power up his spells. That's basically the purpose of a slaymate. And you get this, it was actually the granddaughter of the count. So hey, how's that for twisted? In the end, however, Demetrius was defeated and peace returned to the land. Or so the party believed. The arrow, revealing his name to be Nikolai, asked the party to take on one last job. Peace could not truly return until the current king was slain and hires them to assassinate the tyrant. The party accepts and they all take positions. The sharpshooter takes aim and the king stands on the balcony of his castle, delivering a speech for the people. But before he could fire the arrow, the king introduced the sorceress that has aided in restoring order to his kingdom. The party froze at the announcement, as they knew who it was. She reveals herself, thanking the king for his words. It was the sorcerer Algieri. Now, before I continue, I'm going to make a confession, and I have stolen a lot of ideas. And you're probably thinking, oh, interest. Every DM steals ideas, especially for the first campaign. It can't be that bad. Well, see, Algieri is basically a mixture of the Final Fantasy IV and the Final Fantasy VIII main villains, Gobus and Ultimecia. In fact, I took a page of Final Fantasy VIII, and she kills the king in front of the audience, tosses his corpse down the balcony, and then she delivers her speech. And then they cheer. The people cheer, the audience cheers at the king's death and at the sorceress's proclamation, saying that she promises better days for Thule. The party flees the scene, deciding to lay low when Nikolai came up with a new course of action. Now, I did say earlier that Nasir was part of in a different campaign in the Frozen Lands. So where was he during all this? Let me tell you. The Dwarven lands in the South Pole had a problem of their own. A white dragon named Beslaranathon became an enemy of the lands, using his kobolds to raid villages. Now, these kobolds were white-scaled. They were half-dragon kobolds. They were all the white kobolds were his offspring. Alright, let's get that out of the way. A group was formed to take the dragon down, spearheaded by a gold dragon shaman named Nasir the Exiled. Along with his companions, as well as two NPCs, a Goliath barbarian named Andre, and a bronze dragonborn paladin named Grisha. They take a carriage that would lead them to the dragon's lair. Now, if you're from 5e and haven't played 3.5, The Dragonborn is actually different. It's not a race, but more like a template. At the same time, it's it's less of a template and more of a transformation. Any race can become a Dragonborn, but it takes like 100 gold, and it requires that you sit still inside of an egg, makeshift egg, for 24 hours as you begin to transform inside, and a promise to devote yourself to Bahamut, the Lord of the Good Dragons, for the rest of your days. Now, the benefits of this is higher constitution, a breath weapon, wings, or I forgot what else. Now, like when I said breath weapon and wings, what I meant to say was breath weapon or wings, and they power up as you level up, no matter what. Andre, the Goliath barbarian that I mentioned earlier, he was actually part of an expedition who failed to take down the dragon, and he was shamed by his tribe mates in the mountains, and he was exiled as well. So I guess that's kind of why he got picked up, because Nasir could kind of relate. But anyway, the party goes down to the dragon's lair, stopping by towns along the way, getting rid of enemies such as shambling mounts, ogres, wraiths, and even a crusader of Erythnul, the Many, which is the god of slaughter. But the climax of this adventure ensued when they arrived at the dragon's lair. Beslaranathon and his sent his most powerful children, half-dragon kobolds with several class levels. And now when I say class levels, I don't mean NPC levels. I mean actual class levels. Monk, fighter, you name it. And they actually managed to take down half the party. By the time every single kobold in the lair was slain, only Nasir, Grisha, and Andre, plus a werewolf monk named Samuel, remained. Now, what in reality was that this campaign, I honestly forgot what the deal was, but I couldn't continue for a while, and a lot of the players left, and I decided to merge both campaigns. So because the players that remained, they were good players, and well, only Nasir's player joined, but I didn't really want to lose them. So I decided to join both campaigns so we could all play it in one day instead of two separate days. How did I merge them? Here's how it happened. Determined to take down the beast once and for all, Nasir led his remaining companions to the dragon's chamber. A dialogue ensues, and before combat could even begin, they hear voices. The dragon investigates, and what does he find? He finds Cronus and his friends, who had arrived looking at the dragon's hoard for an item called the Cygnus Circlet. For his blatant disrespect, Cronus is frozen into a popsicle and combat ensues. Both parties join together to take down this dragon. It took a great deal of effort, but they managed to pull it off. It was a level 10 party, I think, against the CR12 dragon. Peace returns to the frozen lands, and once he wraps up any loose ends, Nasir decides to join Cronus' party. Now, what Nasir does is that he goes back to this town and finds out that a mind flayer was behind all the xenophobia. And unfortunately, he gets away. But now that Nasir has joined the main party, when the rhetoric force having grown, Nikolai contacts the party again and hires them to infiltrate the castle and slay Algieri. When they successfully go inside and find her, the villain unmasks itself to reveal to be a fake. A turtle-like fiend. And before I proceed, let me remind you that I've stolen a lot of ideas. A turtle-like fiend who takes who poses as a figurehead. Oh, who could this be? No more, none other than the drowned king Kagnatso from Final Fantasy IV. I've actually found a stat block on him from the FFRPG, I think that's what it's called, or FFD20. I don't know. I'll have to link it down in the description. He stood in Algieti's place while she resumed her galactic quest for conquest. The fiend challenges them to battle and almost manages to drown the party wizard, but he, like all the others before him, is defeated. A later adventure, actually, it takes the party to the year 1350, when the Black Plague was just everywhere. I forgot the name of the city, but it was actually French. It was like yes, and the twist that I added to the Black Plague was that there was a zombie horde. The rats were infecting people, and they would raise up as zombies. And they found a necromancer named Scarmaglione. He was also serving Algieri as one of her archfiends to raise plague victims as corpses. And while he takes on the party once he's discovered, guess what? He too goes down. After some respite back at the grove, the party meets a woman named Edana, revealing herself to be the Queen of Misartham, a land to the north and former enemy of Thule. With the war over due to the former king's death, Edana traveled to Thule, seeking brave heroes to help her defeat Algieri. Because in a separate campaign, in a one-shot, it took place in Misartham, and the party discovered that her ancestor, the Great Worm Jazz, a brass dragon, died by one of Algieri's soldiers, with the mastermind being Rubicante, the Archer of Fire, who was also taken down. But anyway, having judged Algieri as a powerful outworlder, Edana needed a crew to escort her to the plane of Limbo to awaken her master, a hero of her past, a paladin who was dubbed the Golden Argonaut, a man named Shiratan. I'm giving you guys the short version, but it still goes on for a bit. So, prepare yourselves. She brought her army with her and successfully recruited the party. She managed to convince them through some roleplay. So the party travels to Limbo, and they immediately meet a Hound Archon named Sirius the Seeker. Now, you gotta realize, this is a lawful good outsider in a chaotic plane. He was stuck there for years due to a trap set by one of his enemies. Jaded and desensitized from the chaos around him, the Archon helps the party find the sleeping knight, while telling them their efforts would be futile. He was a bit cynical about the whole ordeal. His tone, however, changes at the mere mention of Algieri, and is determined to join the party so he could take on his most hated foe. The party finds Shiratan sleeping inside a crystallized pillar at the Gate of Cord, a portal that led to Isgard, the chaotic good / neutral plane, which is basically Valhalla. Using her most powerful scions, Edana commands them to break open the crystal. But this actually takes time because the crystal happened to be incredibly hard, and she needed a big force of psychics to break it open. Weapons couldn't work on it, not even adamantine weapons. This was a powerful crystal. And as this was going on, an army of several hostile entities had arrived, Yugolots from the plane of Gehenna. What are necromentals? As in, elementals that were raised from the dead. That's actually a template from Libris Mortis. Look it up. Slotty, giants, and black kobolds and their parent dragon teamed up after hearing word that Sheratan's resurrection was imminent. They feared him so much that they set aside their differences and set their sights on the Scions. Sirius takes Idana's place while she assists her Scions. The Archon proved himself as a capable leader and orders the army to hold back. And here's a moment of theft again. As the party successfully defeats a majority of this army, along with the army that Idana had brought, there was one creature, powerful enough to stand up to them all. A powerful Baylord, an advanced Baylord, named Skarbrand. Thanks to Skarbrand, the heroes were forced to retreat as Idana's men were slain, one after the other. The Yugolots cornered the party, and Idana and her soldiers were at their wits' end. Nothing they could do would stop them, right when Skarbrand swings his mighty axes at them. Then time stops. Sheratan, along with the fallen worm Jazz, Idana's ancestor, and the souls of any party member that has died thus far, they look on. They acted as a beacon. They all acted as beacons in the afterlife. Their spirits ended up in limbo and acted as beacons for Sheratan. Because the thing is, Sheratan's soul was in a state of permanent astral projection, and he couldn't find his body in the infinite plane of limbo. But after he saw the light of their souls, acting as a beacon, he managed to find them. He thanks them. And with an angelic being only named the Melody Weaver, they are escorted to the afterlife, to the true afterlife. Then Sheratan arrives, steps inside his body, and with a bright flash of light, he teleports the party and the surviving armies out of there. He teleports everyone back to the grove. While the party caught on from the clues given to them, Sheratan reveals that he was one of the 12 guardians of the universe, powerful entities tasked with safeguarding the flow of time. Remember when I said that there were 76 artifacts based on the 88 constellations of the sky? This is why. Sheratan is the guardian of Arytiss. And he was charged with defending this section of the universe. He was the leader of the Guardians of the Zodiac, a position robbed from him by Kairos, the Master of Time. Remember what I said early on? The Master of Time, leader of the Tempus Custos, the Guardians of Time. While Kairos forged his weapons and armor for the Guardians, his duty as Master of Time is to lead his people, and only lead the Guardians if Sheratan ever went missing. Sheratan admits that he had erred in his ways, as he felt he could leave Kairos in charge while he slept for centuries. He tasks Cronus to find the remaining artifacts while he searched for the remaining Guardians and overturned Kairos' leadership. Cronus then asks the party once again to help him out, as now the fate of the entire universe depends on it. Meanwhile, aboard a massive airship, out of the party's sight, a man wearing a smith's outfit and wielding a giant hammer looked down from the skies. He was not pleased and uttered a monologue that only the players, not their characters, could hear. "Cronus," he says, "how long will you keep opposing me? The clocks of time won't stop for anyone, and sooner or later, your time will run out. That goes for you as well, Nasir. Frou. He knows them by name, but the players don't even know who he is. And I pointed out that this was Kairos, the Master of Time. How would this man know them while they themselves don't know him? That's a story for another time. Now, I'm going to summarize the last session we had. And we're almost done here. So I'm just doing this so you guys could catch up to the rest of the party. I know I went on for a long time, and believe me, this campaign has been going on for years now, on and off. So there should be more on this summary, but I left a lot of things out for a reason. It's mostly just filler or not really that important in the end. Anyway, the next session focusing on this main scenario as the Archdruid summoning the party once again. At this point, we had Nasir, Frou, Arytiss, and Ezekiel. This time, Cronus detected a new artifact, one he calls the Scutum Bracers, the ultimate defensive item. With the help of a new member, a human druid named Leif, the party travels through time and space to the year 4954 to a satellite named Miranda, one of the moons in Uranus. Protected from the environment, as well as the planet's radiation, thanks to a strong crystal tunnel system, Cronus guides the party to the location of the artifact when they bumped into two Canoloths and a Goristro. Now, a Canoloth is a Yugoloth, which is a daemon, an evil outsider that is between a devil and a demon, and works as a mercenary for both. However, Canoloths are basically just attack dogs, covered in armor. And while they're blind, they have blind sense, and their tongues have spikes on them. A Goristro is a demon. It's a member of the Tanari, which a lot of demons are part of the Tanari, but not all of them are. It's a huge size, bull-like creature, the size of a storm giant, I believe. And he was patrolling the area when the party bumps into them. Initiative is rolled because the Goristro was ordered to attack anybody he sees on sight. The beings of evil seek to destroy the party, but their combined efforts were no match for the party's strength. Cronus then leads the party to the location of the artifact, a green crystal tower, the structure completely opaque. That, my friends, is pretty much Quest of the Stars in a nutshell. Like I said, people have come and gone, and I mean it, come and gone. That's a lot of people. Some of the players, I just don't want to see them ever again. Others had to leave for personal reasons. All in all, right now, I'm pretty happy with the party that I have now, to the point where I want to start streaming my games for them. They all said yes. Save for one, I'm still waiting for his answer, but I believe he will say yes, considering he's done videos in the past. But let's see, what else? If I wasn't clear on anything on this video, feel free to shoot down a question down below. But hopefully, I was able to introduce you to my homebrew campaign. My first ever homebrew campaign from back in 2016. I made this campaign back in 2016 when I was still freshly new to D&D. And I needed an outlet to make my story, and this was the best I could do. I hope I was able to help you all understand what goes up in the mind. But if you don't, like I said, feel free to ask me, and I'll be happy to answer. So anyway, thank you all so much for watching. And as always, have a good night, everybody.